Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Bill Whittle, your host at the Stratosphere Lounge, and coming to you live from beautiful downtown Sherman Oaks, California. Um, Everybody is talking about how they can hear the AC in my studio. We're just grateful to have AC. Uh, so anyway, good to be here. Hi everybody. Sorry about the echo. Okay, I can't tell what that echo is. Hang on, hang on. I will remove this sound. I will add some sound. How's that? Is it better or worse? I'm going to try and monitor this, which makes it even more difficult. Better, better. Aha! It's better, but it's still there. How about this? Hang on. We're using advanced technology now. How about that? Crunchy echoes. You know, there's nothing like eating carrots in a cave to improve your mood. I took one of the inputs down. How's that? All right. Terrific. We have a reputation to maintain after all. And I'm glad we got that out of the way. Now we can get on to a perfectly produced, error-free show of the kind that our audience has come to expect. Sorry about the carrots. This will be the last one. Anyway, good to be back. Very good to be back. Going to be in, where am I going to be? Westlake Village tomorrow. So that would have been 3 Thursdays in a row, and that's just way too much. So last week, and by the way, both times, both Thursdays, I just plain forgot to put a post up. I was just gone. So sorry about that. But in any event, last week was tremendous. This time last week, my beautiful wife Natasha, hello baby, we're up in Carmel at a speaking event. But you know, when somebody says, "Hey, do you want to come speak at our club in Carmel on Valentine's Day?" My answer to that is, can I bring my wife? And the answer is yes. And so we did, and we had an absolutely incredible time. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's just shockingly beautiful up there. But I have to tell you, I think for me the best part of the trip was the way we got up there. We had gone to Pismo Beach on Amtrak on the Pacific Surfliner. And I think I mentioned that we went all the way around Vandenberg Air Force Base, and I'd never been that far out on the peninsula. It was great. However, we decided that we liked the train so much that when I was taking a look at going to Carmel, I found out that there's a station in Salinas, which is about a 25, 30-minute away by Uber. So we got ourselves a little roomette on Amtrak, and the trip from Los Angeles to Salinas is about 8 hours, 8.5 by train. We got on the train. We got, I don't know, what was it, honey, 3 hours, 4 hours into it, somewhere around there, maybe a little less. And the train stopped. It was very windy during that weekend. Big storm came through. They said there's something on the tracks. We're getting some crews out there. I was just pleased to know they had a way to know that there was something on the tracks. Anyway, they had to get these things off the tracks, and it took about an hour, at least, maybe an hour and a half. We were stopped there for an hour, and I just remember thinking this whole time, I don't care. I don't care. Not only do I not care about being delayed an hour, I'm kind of glad that we're being delayed an hour. There are going to be people listening to this who've had this experience their entire lives, and they're going to look at me like one of these newly come, converts. But I have to tell you, this traveling by train is unbelievable, and part of it may be only because I've done hundreds and hundreds of commercial flights. which is nothing but stress and this. And we went to Arizona the week before, and it took us longer to go from Sherman Oaks to LAX than it did to fly from LAX to Tucson, and get to the hotel on the other end as well. So, so this train thing was just a shocking thing. So I knew we'd gone up in the seats, business class, up to Pismo, but I knew I always wanted to try one of these sleeper cars. I've never done that before either. And I thought I was renting an entire room. Turned out I was booking a roomette, which is still your own little unit, and you can close the door and the curtains, and the two seats on the bottom face each other, and there's a bunk up on the top that can come down, and then you can lay the bottom seats flat. And I'd had about 4 hours sleep the night before, so we went up, we took a ride, we're looking at all this beautiful scenery. It's like having a really cozy hotel room with a big window, and things are moving by. And then we went up and we had a lunch reservation, which I was also not expecting. But the dining car can only deal with so many people at one time, mostly on account of they're so understaffed. Went up, had a perfectly okay lunch, and then went back down. Natasha's looking out the window and doing some work, and I pulled this bunk down, and boom, gone. I slept about 3 hours on the way up, and I didn't want to get off the train. I really didn't. And neither did Natasha. And then we saw Carmel, which is just absolutely beautiful, and it's the most incredible place to spend Valentine's Day with somebody who you've been waiting for Valentine's Day for pretty much your whole life. And then the train back. And the train back was fantastic. Now, coming back, on the way up, out of Van Nuys, we left Van Nuys Station and got into Salinas. Leaving Van Nuys, I was shocked, and I'm not easily shocked by this anymore, because underneath every freeway overpass in LA now, underneath the one in Sherman Oaks, everywhere. It's not just in bad neighborhoods, everywhere. We would see these tent cities and just piles of garbage and collections of plastic jugs from homeless people. But on the way up, when we got on the rail, I just saw just entire communities of people living out of cardboard boxes and stuff. And then that was on the trip up. On the trip back, we were on the other side of the train, and we were down on the ground floor instead of the upper floor, like when we went out. And on the way back, out of Salinas, we went through homeless metropolis. We passed by what now bears repeating. Eric Blake said, just remember, Bill, if she says, "Oh, honey, don't get me anything," it's a trap. It is a trap. So I couldn't believe how many, not how many, but this homeless city went on for a mile. The entire half hour out of Salinas, there were clusters of them, but this one was just continuous for a mile or two. And I was thinking, this high-speed train that we need in order to move farmers rapidly from Modesto to Bakersfield and back is obviously just a gigantic scam. And, it's a funny thing, because obviously I'm very hesitant of subsidies and suspicions and all the rest of it. But I think a rail network is in the national interest. I know that Amtrak is not the answer really as it exists, because it's neither a corporation nor the government. It's one of those things like the U.S. Postal Service that appear to be semi-private companies that are designed to lose money. But with that said, I was talking to somebody. That's kind of weird too, and unusual, a little uncomfortable, and also kind of charming, is that since they have such limited service capabilities in the dinner car, you don't get a table to yourself, even though there are plenty of tables. They put you down, they seat somebody else down. You have to actually meet people and talk to them. I know, it's shocking and horrible. We were frightened and confused. But we met some great people, and one of the people we met on one of those 4 meals, which were paid for in the cost of our little dinette, by the way. One of those people took the train everywhere, and it told me something that I didn't know, and I was pretty upset about. It turned out that that you used to be able to take Amtrak from Los Angeles, let's say, and if you wanted to go to Florida, you'd basically just take the Southern Line all the way to New Orleans through to Jacksonville, somewhere around there. Then you'd switch south, and you'd go all the way down the Florida Peninsula. But this person told me that they go to visit their, I guess it's their son or their grandson in Florida every other year, and they can take the train from, now picture in your mind, little map. They can take the train from Los Angeles through Phoenix or Tucson, all the way out to New Orleans. And when they get to New Orleans, instead of just going the extra, 400 or 500 miles to Jacksonville, when they get to New Orleans, they have to go up the coast a little. The line between New Orleans and Jacksonville was destroyed during Hurricane Katrina. It was never replaced. So now this guy goes from Los Angeles to New Orleans in order to get to, let's say, Orlando. Los Angeles to New Orleans. When he gets to New Orleans, he has to make a slight detour to Chicago. And from Chicago, another small detour to something like Baltimore or something like that. And then all the way back down the coast again. It doubles the trip. It probably more than doubles the trip. It turns a 2-day train ride into a 4-day, 4.5-day, 5-day train ride. I don't know what to say about this. I don't know what it would, but when somebody tells me that that we used to have a rail line between New Orleans and Jacksonville, and now we don't, and that passengers have to go from New Orleans to Chicago to Baltimore back down to Jacksonville, and that rail line has not been replaced or repaired, that actually pisses me off quite a bit. I know they're subsidized, and I don't like the fact they're subsidized, and I also know that they're not going to make money as a business, apparently, although I'm not sure why. It seems to me like it's just they don't know how to advertise, because anybody who's ever traveled in the modern world, I'm just speaking for myself and Natasha, but once I found that train, it's like, man, I'm taking the train everywhere. Anywhere I can go, I'm going to do it. So why wasn't it fixed? I mean, it's been, what? It's been almost 14 years? And they just didn't fix it. And I'm sure they didn't fix it because they didn't have the money. And when I hear that we don't have the money, this is the part that really pisses me off. Well, we've had to make people make a 2,000-mile detour for 15 years because we don't have the money. You don't have the money? Oh, here's somebody. I knew we'd find somebody who would know the answer. I knew it. Cash 18 says it was repaired over a decade ago, but Amtrak will not use the CSX line. This is something else I don't understand, and it's something I probably should understand, because at the very least it's interesting. Amtrak has an unusual ability and habit, which I admire, actually, of telling the passengers exactly what's going on. I've really been astonished at this. So every now and then the train will have to stop, and I have no problem with this at all. Well, folks, we have to stop here for a few moments. Got to wait for the southbound train to pass, and then when we get a green light, we'll be going ahead, and so on and so forth. But many times on the trip up and back, we'd stop, and the guy would say, I remember coming back, he said this twice. He said, we're going to stop here, ladies and gentlemen. We need to get a warrant to travel on, I don't remember for sure, but I think it was Union Pacific line. And then when we got another distance, he said, now we need another warrant to travel on this other line. And here's the thing that I didn't understand. I mean, it's obvious when you think about it, but you think about rails and you think, well, rails are like roads, like highways. You just get on them and go. No, it's not like that at all. Apparently, the different companies own different stretches of the road, and so if you're going to travel from one end to the other, You know, you have to get all these permissions. And when somebody said that Amtrak will not use the CSX line, where'd it go? My question is, if you can answer it, Cash, is why? Why don't they use it? So obviously he says the line was repaired over a decade ago, but Amtrak is still making a 2,000-mile detour. So why? Now, Eric Blake points out that the train, look, the reason I wanted to talk about the train just as our introduction tonight is because it's not a place to, it's not a way to get there in a hurry. It's so different than everything I'm used to that, I mean, I didn't want to get off the train. I was having a wonderful time. My wife and I were having a great time. We get tired, we'd sleep a little bit. We could actually sleep. You weren't crammed into this thing, and there was no TSA, and there was no, you have to check these bags, and none of that stuff. You just put the bags on the train and off you go. And they got a lot of room on a train, and they carry a lot of bags on a train, primarily because the train doesn't have to fly. And Sir Wibben says that Amtrak loses tons yearly. I understand that, and I don't like it. I don't know why. Let me put it this way. I suspect. Okay, so CSX wants to charge a heavy fee to use a right-of-way. So I know obviously we use trains for freight. Obviously the entire country lives on trucks and trains. And ships come into Long Beach Harbor, container ships from all over the world. They pull them off of the ship with computerized cranes, which is an amazing thing in itself. Drop them onto trucks, and the trucks either take them locally, but most of the trucks go to the giant rail yard in East LA, and they put them on trains, and then they go around the country. And a great percentage of the total stuff that comes into the United States for sale, when you go down and buy a Chinese power drill at Home Depot, it almost certainly came through Long Beach and got to where you are by train. So the rail lines exist, and freight takes priority over passengers, I read. And that makes kind of sense to me too, because we don't have that much train traffic. But all I'm saying is this. Excuse me for not trying the name. I want to say Extisht. Says both times I rode on Amtrak, they broke down. I ended up on buses anyway. We had a situation going up north where we were 7 miles away from Salinas, and the conductor stopped. And again, this brutal honesty. Folks, yeah, we have to stop for a minute here. We had a hose that became disconnected, and we're working on repairing that now. And as soon as we get the hose back connected, we'll be on our way. And it's about a half an hour delay. And again, I'm comfortable, so I don't care. But here's kind of the rhetorical question. Obviously, this country does not move at the speed of trains. And for all the talk about high-speed trains, and for all the talk about taking the trains and rail systems and how it works in Europe, let's be honest, Europe is the size of San Bernardino County. We have so much further to go than Europeans do, that going at 60, 70 miles an hour average, and that's, I think, probably generous, is just not feasible. You can't run a country, you can't make business trips when it takes 3 days to go from the East Coast to the West Coast, no matter what shape your rails are in. So I understand that. And I understand that freight doesn't really care if it's got to get there fast, it'll go FedEx or some other air freight, but I understand how it works. I do. My question is, since the experience is so pleasant, and it's so pleasant under these circumstances, it's a pleasant experience under the circumstances of being just grotesquely understaffed and with maintenance issues and delays and all the rest. It seems to me that if you had this in the hands of a private company that knew something about advertising, you could make a profit on this. And the profit is not going to come. I'm talking about long distance rail. I'm not going to deal with the Eastern Corridor rail transit system. I don't know whether that makes money or not, but in any event, it's that rail is actually working up there because northeastern America is about the size of Europe. The rest of the country is big. So I'm wondering if it couldn't make money if it were managed by somebody who knew how to make money. Um, Took a trip to Lake Norland. Yeah, Greyhound's not a great experience. So high-speed rail doesn't do anything for us. It doesn't help us here. In the northeastern corridor, high-speed rail doesn't work because you've got so many stops for commuters that are in such a short distance away from each other that you never get to high speed. So high speed rail in the northeastern corridor where all of these rail lines and commuter lines are, that doesn't make any sense. And then high speed rail across the country doesn't make any sense because no one is going to be able to justify going at 180 miles an hour when they can go at 550 miles an hour. A 5-hour flight from LA to New York is really rough physically and really tedious. And when I'm on the plane, I'm just thinking, my God, it can't be possible. Another 2 hours. My God, is this flight ever going to end? Train's just the opposite. So I'm trying to understand this, and I think I get the basics. So if it seems like this analysis is correct, then high-speed rail doesn't work in the Northeast. And high-speed rail doesn't work across country because the country's too big for high-speed rail. Japan has wonderful high-speed rail system, and so does France, but you can get from one end of Japan to the other end of Japan in a reasonable amount of time at 160, 200 miles an hour. You can't do it in LA. So could a manager, if a private company were to take over Amtrak and run it as a Steve Darrow, if only we could teach trains to fly. Yeah, that would be it. If only we could teach them to fly. So yeah, and another point here, Sir Wilbin says, high-speed rail sounds progressive and green, and that's why it keeps getting pushed. And I agree. And I know that the power freaks want us on rails because rails determine where we go and when we go there. They don't like cars. I get it. And as I said earlier, but Pat just backed it up, Japan's about the size of California. So I don't see a need for high-speed rail. This is what I'm saying. Could Amtrak make money by offering what Natasha and I loved about it, which is just the plain comfort and the relaxation for a reasonable period of time? And when I say a reasonable period of time, I'm saying maybe top end 2 to 3 day trip. Because it is an incredibly great experience for anyone who's ever had to travel by air. And I'm all about the miracle of air travel. When I hear Europeans say, why don't you have a rail system like we have in Europe, I tell them about the whole, size of Japan thing and all the rest of it. And I also say, I don't know how many airports there are in France. Maybe there's commercial airports. There might be 30. The United States has 13,000 airports, paved airports, and we must have 200-300 commercial airports, at least that. It's a big country, and we fly to get from some places to another. That's great. I get it. And when they talk about high-speed rail in California, the original iteration was going to be, if only there was some way to get from Los Angeles to San Francisco at high speed. Yeah, if only there was some way to do that. Get there at 160 miles an hour, or you could take one of the 50 or 60 flights a day that'll get you there in 550 miles an hour. But anyway, I'm just digressing as I usually do. The question is, could it work? I don't like government subsidies on anything, and I know it loses money, but does it have to? And that's the first step. And the second step is, well, I don't really want to go there. I was about to say, if there was a subsidy for something that the federal government paid, this would at least be something that would qualify. In other words, if federal dollars have to go someplace, I'd rather have them go into buffing up some kind of a passenger rail line across the United States rather than, paying for public sector employees' retirement funds and EPA regulations and all the rest of it. Anyway, for what it's worth. Mr. Subtle says, but airplanes are not owned by the government. Precisely right. So I get it. I really do. I'm not calling for putting government money into Amtrak. I am saying, however, and I am saying high-speed rail is a prestige project, as Joseph Talbot said. And by the way, when I say it's a prestige project, it's actually, I just did a Bill Whittle Now about this morning, this whole train thing. Scott asked me a question about the high-speed rail. But what I talk about in that, what I talk about in that episode is that this high-speed rail in California is not a prestige project. That's the way to think about it if you don't understand the nature of what we're dealing with out here. So when you say that the high-speed rail system in California is a prestige project, which is what I believed for years and years, what you're thinking is, oh, these politicians are doing it because they want to look good in front of the people, and they want to look good in front of their European betters at cocktail parties and stuff. But I think that's missing the mark. I think that's a rational way to look at it, or at least a somewhat rational way to look at it. But there's a much more logical reason for high-speed rail, and this is the reason why we have high-speed rail project in California. It's a two-part reason. The first part is that the high-speed rail system is a way for the politicians to make money, take money from people that make money, and give it to people who vote for them. That's why there's a high-speed rail system in California. It is simply it's a Potemkin village that is there constructed in order to allow you to put money into the system with the belief that you're going to get something that may or may not be useful, but at least sounds cool. So they pick up $20 billion or $200 billion or whatever for the high-speed rail system, and then they keep a significant portion of that for their $500,000-$600,000 a year or $200,000 a year retirement funds for the government or whatever. And then what the politicians do is they disperse the jobs for building the high-speed rail to their crony companies that are bid on by, quota systems and all the rest of it. And then on top of it, the high-speed rail companies then get their people in the union to go out there and organize and vote for these guys. So it's like management and labor working together to rip off the customer. There is nobody protecting the customer. I'm the customer. I pay California income tax. So they take my money, they send it to Sacramento. They keep a big hunk of every dollar, and then what's left of it goes out to somebody's company or companies that are friends of the politicians who say that, well, since it's a union job, now we're going to get the unions involved, and the unions get out there and they do the footwork and all the rest of the stuff necessary to reelect the people that make the decisions in the first place. And it's as Sir Wibbin says, it's a way to redistribute wealth. It is absolutely a way to redistribute wealth. And frankly, if they're going to redistribute wealth like that, why even use the high-speed rail system at all? Why not just use the existing freight system and have guys like me just go down there and pitch $100 bills into one of these container things? And when you've filled up a container full of $100 bills, you keep filling them up until you got a train that goes a mile or two long, ship the money to Sacramento, cut out the middleman, and then just keep it. Why don't we just save some time? And I talk about the fact that Trump's asking for some of that money back, which I think is awesome. When Donald Trump says, hey, look, the federal government paid all this money into the high-speed rail system, which you've just canceled or truncated. We want the money back. I thought, oh, this guy's awesome. Awesome. Eric Blake says, just remember California. You could have had a businessman as governor, John Cox, but you chose the successor to Brown. Well, first of all, I didn't. But secondly, Eric, I was in a room with John Cox. I was a fundraiser with him. I was in the front row of a big room full of people. And I have never met a politician that I found less attractive than John Cox. He is just oily, bogus. He may be a fine businessman. I voted for him. He would have been a much better choice. But man alive, he was a miserable politician. So, anyway. That's it. So, anyway, we had a wonderful experience. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Despite the... I'd like to know more about this. If you can give it to me again, I'll write it down. Was it WSX? Was the line? So the line connecting New Orleans to Jacksonville is charging so much money for the use of the rails that Amtrak said, no thanks. I guess that's how it worked. That makes sense. But in CSX, thank you. I'm going to just look into that because I'm curious. Anyway, that's our train story. But we had a wonderful time, and they're not paying me. I am not a paid spokesman. of Amtrak under any circumstances. However, I will say that if you get a chance to a small take a small trip, I cannot recommend it highly enough. A little roomette or a little sleeper car. I'm not 47 yet, says we talking about Ted Cruz, Oily. I have to tell you, um, I've had a chance to sit down and talk with Ted several times, and and I think Ted is just an incredibly great, sincere guy. If he comes across as oily, I've seen sometimes I've seen on TV where he looks a little bit that way, but honestly, I think he's just a tremendously sweet guy. First time I met Ted Cruz was right at the beginning of his Senate campaign, and they were already talking about a potential presidential candidate. And I said, Ted Cruz is too nice to be president. He's too sincere. Um, so Ted has an image problem, and that is just bad management because he genuinely is a really honest, engaging guy. And if he comes off looking different, I'm saying this from some experience. I've spent a couple hours, with Ted Cruz over the course of many years, and I just really like him. I just like him. Um, John Galt, CSA, says, had lunch with him, brilliant, but he never talks down to anyone. That's exactly what I found. That's exactly what I found. He's just a brilliant guy, had the Constitution memorized at age 13 or something, but never talks down to you, and is just a real solid, nice guy. And when I saw the campaign in 2016, I just I heard people saying, "Oh, he's just nasty. He's so phony. He's so this." It's like Ted Cruz, and then I would watch some of the things that they're putting out, and just to toss this in, I am an enormous fan of Ted Cruz. I'll do anything he asks, and just before the California primary, he gave me 45. He asked me to come down to an event. I came down. He gave me 45 minutes of his time to get his opinion on things, and that was 2 days or 3 days before the California primary. For a presidential candidate, one of two remaining, to give you that kind of time is a tremendous compliment. Um, but but I remember thinking that, my God, who's running the image on this? You know, who's running his image? Who's doing this? I said to some of the people after Ted left, I said, listen, if you want, I wouldn't charge you for this unless you're falling out of money. But I really like Ted Cruz, so what I would say to you is, I don't want to get involved with the campaign to teach Ted how to behave how to act on camera. I want to teach Ted how to not act on camera. That's what I want to do. I want to teach him how to not act on camera. He's much better when he's himself, and then when he gets into speech mode, and I've seen him do a lot of speeches, he gets into this mode, and this, and I say this with enormous affection and respect for him. But I'd watch Ted doing his camp. I'd be backstage with Ted chatting with him. I thought this guy's going to get out there and just knock it out of the park. He gets out on stage. He starts his speech, and he goes into campaign mode. And Ted, when Ted Cruz is about to deliver a joke line, you can see this thing coming from the next county. I mean, you can just see the joke coming. Here comes the windup. It's just like, oh my God. And that's because somebody has coached him, I suspect, on how to deliver these things. But in any event, he's just not well represented. And I think if people knew him, and I'm not saying I'm a close friend, but I will say it's been one of the high points of my life to be able to say in all honesty that I was standing at a urinal in Fort Lauderdale Airport and had Ted Cruz walk across the men's room to tap me on the shoulder and say hi. He'd washed his hands first, I might point out. I didn't even know he was there. So I just love the guy. I love him. And he deserves a lot better. Anyway, enough of this opening rambling. I think 45 minutes, that ought to get us covered as far as our contractual obligations for technical errors and rambling openings are concerned. So let's get to the questions now. I'm going to go look at the questions, and everybody's yapping and barking, and they're like, everybody's like like little, it's like feeding 100 puppies here. However, I would like to say one thing. And that's concerning the new website. That son of a bitch, Scott, that miserable, lowlife, lazy, stealing bastard, has put so much work into this thing. And contrary to our previous attempt, where our mission was to surprise our members with something that didn't work, that they didn't know how to work, and then make things as difficult as possible for them to understand. That was the original plan back in November. Now, we've decided to try a different approach based on Scott's idea. So rather than surprising people with something that doesn't work, and Bill Whittle Cruise, somebody's talked about that. Maybe we can bring that up too. Rather than going with the, hey, let's surprise them with something that doesn't work and make them as frustrated as possible strategy, which I championed enthusiastically, apparently. I have no memory of it, but anyway. Scott decided, no, I knew we needed to do something, and Scott just stepped up with it. So here's just a couple things from kind of behind the curtain about the new website. And these are little tiny things, but you may find them interesting. First of all, we decided to test the website before we went public with the website. I know that's a bizarre thought, and many of you probably should have warned you to be sitting down before we did that. But nevertheless, that's what we did. And then turned out that there were a couple things that seemed obvious and didn't work, and longtime members just got an invitation to do the first of the, yes, this is the new website, got an invitation to do the beta testing, and he just wrote in, tried to log in, didn't work, couldn't do this, broken. I said, well, all right, well, thank you. It was broken for about 15 minutes in that regard, and then we got it fixed. We spent actual money from the members of BillWhittle.com to have code written specifically to make this thing easy to use. And so when Scott inherited the project, in order to get people signed up with their credit cards and access and all the rest of this stuff, it was a 3-step process. And so Scott said that he thought it'd be possible to write some code to streamline that, but he didn't know how to do it. I said, let's go to Upwork, which is an online talent agency, hiring agency for computer services. Scott went up there, put up the bid, told him what we wanted. Ended up being a Frenchman who's done an amazing job. So we basically got, you hold on to that thought there, Sir Wibben. Yeah, hold that thought. I do not like the old site. I couldn't update my credit card information, so I've not been a member for a year now. Hold that thought. So what we did was we had some software written that basically allowed the credit card company to communicate with the website. And just so you know, we do not have access to that credit card information. We don't have it. We don't want it, and we don't have it. It's secure, and we don't have access to it. But what we did was we wrote some software that made it a 2-step process. And from that point, Scott and I talked a little bit, and then Scott said, for a little extra money to this guy, we could make this a 1-step process. Do it. So we did it. Now, when this new website is up, some people I think will be able to move automatically, but here's the worst case scenario, okay? Worst case scenario is you will go in, you will set up your member profile. You'll be able to bring a picture of yourself. You'll be able to write some things about yourself. This is what I'm getting at, and this is what I really love. There will be all kinds of places for you to put information about yourself. You'll be able to follow other members and see their website, their Facebook pages, and so on. Once you do that, and it communicates with the billing company, then the billing company is the gatekeeper for the membership site. And so it is a one-time thing. And when you go to your own page, your members page on the new site, you will have your name, comments, picture if you want one. Here's your membership status. Here's the credit card number. Here's all of it. It's all in one place. It's just bam, and it's done. And it's very, very, very easy. Some people are on a legacy credit card company called Authorize.net. Those annual renewals won't be renewed at Authorize, so we're going to have to move some people over manually. But we have taken this so seriously after what happened back in November that we basically, I said to Scotty, we need to have little videos, 10, 20-second videos of screen captures like, click this button, do this. If there's any doubt about anything, just do it. So, so we did it, and it's working really, really well. Now, in addition to all of this, little things, I thought, hey, is there room for that banner? Because my wife took such a great picture of me, and frozen in time. Let's use it. And Scott is completely honest. John, I don't know about that. Scott will know, but we will get you. We were going to get everybody over there. Nobody's going to miss a second. So I thought, is there room for a banner? I put my charming face up there like it is on the old news site. And Scott said, we can do it. But if you do it, it looks kind of like a sort of a mom and pop kind of a private site. And I said, well, I am mom and pop. And he said, yeah, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I thought, oh, I like the sound of this. So we decided not to put my face up on the banner. We don't have anything up there. It just says BW. It's BillWhittle.com, no question about it. But we are going to be doing, once we get it open, first things first, see, now that there's an adult in charge of this, things happen in the correct order, apparently, which is fascinating for me to watch. So once we get this thing open to members, then we're going to start opening it up. Scott's going to do some more commentary, and he's going to do. Some people suggested, I don't know if it was Cheryl, somebody suggested he should do Scrapple Face articles there. So yeah, I don't miss the banner either. I don't take it personally. So we're going to start doing that. I know Alfonso Rachel hasn't had a platform for a while, and I know a lot of people. I know a great guy, Matt, Captain Jacks, has done a couple of videos that commentary that were just great. I mean, just him sitting out there just doing them, they were great. So the new website is going to have a place not only for you to have a member page, but there will be a place where members can post whatever stories they want to. You want to write a story, great. If you want to link to a story, great. That'll be updated as often as you want to update it. So all of this to say that it took, well, Natasha mentioned this to me 2 years ago, but I apparently was so busy tying my shoes or something that I didn't hear it. But sometimes you don't hear things until the time comes to hear them. You're not ready to hear them. But, yeah, Bill Book, yeah, that's actually kind of close. What we realized, what Scott realized primarily, and Natasha realized, essentially what everybody except for me realized, that's probably the best way to put it, was that the value of this is actually the community. And I can understand how disappointing that must be for those of you who are hoping that there'd be something better than this Stratosphere Lounge group, but apparently not. In all seriousness, one of our Stratosphere Lounge members and a member of the Space Game, I swore to myself I would not mention its name on this episode, a friend of ours named Merlin notified us a little over a week ago that his wife had been run over by an SUV, and his wife, I think, is 4'11", and the SUV is somewhat bigger than that. Just run over both wheels twice, boom, 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 boom. And both the video game community and the Stratosphere Lounge community and all of the community sent him enormous letters of support. People started organizing prayer circles, all of this stuff. And when I say stuff, I mean that with the highest respect. Turns out that she's actually recovering remarkably well. Remarkably well. I once said, despite the fact that we're praying for her. But there's sometimes maybe you don't really need to be quite so flip. So it looks like she's going to be okay. She's healing in a way that that is astonishing to the nurses. That's what we hear from Merlin. But that's the outcome. But my point is, yes, that Merlin. My point is, while we're all delighted, needless to say, that we're delighted that things are working out, and proud of ourselves, I might add, too. The point of it is that Merlin sent me a personal message saying he'd never met people like this. Yeah, our Merlin. And he's right, because I've never met people like this. And it took 10 years, I guess, for me to realize that that is essentially, from this point forward, that is what we are selling. Because we have to sell things in order to stay in business. That's the way it goes. If I don't sell something for money, then I have to get a job doing something else. So we have to sell something. And what we're selling from this point forward is not just the commentary. Although I expect we'll be doing firewalls again in the near future. But we're not selling the commentary. Scott nailed it. He said he'd done a lot of work trying to grow church memberships over the course of the years. And Scott said that you can get people into a church with a really good pastor. A good preacher will get people into the church, but people stay in the church for their friends. And I realized, like a lightning bolt, like boom, oh, okay, yeah, that took 10 years for that to sink in. But that's the plan. And people who are members of the Stratosphere Lounge that are watching the show live, which is always a pretty small percentage of total people that watch on YouTube, they know it. It's a small group of people, and we all have pretty much the same values. We love our country. We love freedom. We're all big on technology and all the rest of this stuff. But we're all just good people. Good people. And there aren't a whole lot of good people. There are a lot of good. See, this point is that there are a lot of good people out there. It's just very hard to find them. And so, what this new website's structure is, yeah, we're the family that we get to choose. Well said, John Pershing. What this website is going to be about, and what this company is going to be about going forward, probably starting next week, is it's going to be about. I don't want to call it community because I don't like that word. And every time you hear people say you got to get into the community, or community organizers don't like that word. You call it a fellowship, maybe, or just a pack, whatever. But when you find this is DCG 44S. Yep, when you find a friendly place with good people, you come back time after time, and it's family, exactly. So that's what we're going to be structured for. Not just what we're promoting, but it's what we're going to be structured for. The website going forward is going to be designed not just to distribute whatever messages or opinions I have. It's going to be designed to do that and then connect everybody in the community, kind of like the common sense resistance idea. And I am looking forward to seeing the kind of commentary and the kind of stories that members are going to post. I'm not sure exactly how that. Right now, it sounds like. Right now it appears to be that there's a page for member. There's like a member blog page. Any one of you that's a member can basically start your own blog there and benefit from, if not the numbers, then at least the quality of people that come there all the time. And it's the little things that Scott has put so much work and effort into. One of them is the ability to follow other members, personal message other members from member to member. Scott has set it up so that if you had a question about when a show appeared, there's now a calendar, and was loaded automatically. There's a calendar now that'll allow you to go back at any point in the past as far as YouTube hosted videos goes. And it's a automatic plug-in, and you can go back to January 22nd of 2015, and it will show you what premiered on YouTube on that day. And you can go back and see all of that stuff. He's put together a help desk where you can actually have a ticket. If it turns out you're having a problem with something, you write the ticket, and Scott or I or other people will go and get it solved. And Cheryl has been a big part of the beta testing. She's been doing a great job just checking everything and giving us tons and tons of feedback, along with a lot of other people too. So we're very grateful for that. Very grateful. And we're really liking where it's going. We're really just about ready. We're still knocking the last of the rust off of it. But it's even though it's billwhittle.com, it doesn't say that. It just says BW. It's going to be a place for us to be a community and hopefully grow the community, because I know for a certain fact that there's more than that there are people that watch these shows and all the other commentary. And from this point forward, meaning next week, from this point forward, we are basically going to now hang tight here. Don't pass out before I finish the sentence. But from this point forward, we're essentially saying to ourselves, we are going to be producing content specifically for the members of billwhittle.com. That's who it's for. And then we are going to do cut downs of that content and promote those, get them out wide and get people to watch them. And those will still be free. The firewalls will be full and free. But Bill Whittle Now Right Angles and stuff are going to be for members, and they will be able to see them in their entirety. We will do edited versions of those to distribute to people and see if we can get more people interested. But if they want to watch it, they've got to come to the site, and if they want to see the whole thing, got to come to the site and be members. And part of me is very reluctant to do this, but I'm also facing, the reality of reality, and that is with YouTube putting the screws on everything and Facebook, suppressing our messages so that the membership message doesn't get out there. We just have to face the reality of the situation. Scott's pointed out that it's 29 cents a day for this. And I know everybody's getting hit up, and I know there are people out there who are non-members be able to post on the site, not non-members, but any member. So basically, the thrust from this point forward is we're going to do these shows and these programs for the members. And if you want to see them, you can become a member. And if that's not something you either want to do or can do, then you're certainly welcome to see the best 3 or 4 minutes of every one of these shows. And that's what we're ready to give out for free. Because I remembering, oh boy, Sir Wilson, you are batting 1,000 tonight. Remembering, my God, man, that is fabulous tagline. My God, what a great promotional campaign that is absolutely amazing. Because we've lost a lot of people, and we lose probably 40, 50 people a month, and we gain about that many, and we just can't keep losing people, so we mean not to. Plus, the great thing about this, the really great thing about it for members and for me, is that by having this be essentially open source, there's plenty of reasons to go to the website on a daily basis. It's not just, we do 2 shows a day. That's not bad output for a company that has me, Shelley, Scott, and Matt doing the editing. There are some very, very big companies just down the street that have a staff of 75. And I've seen their facilities and I've met their staff. They do amazing work. It's Daily Wire. It's beautifully run. It's magnificently run. And I have nothing but the highest regard for Jeremy and Ben Shapiro and Mike Knowles and whatever that other guy's name is. They've just really done a magnificent job of it. And they were able to do a magnificent job of it because they went out and raised a significant amount of numbers, certainly 6 figures, probably 7. And they've turned it into a profit-making machine. It's an actual free enterprise, capitalist system, profitable, money-making business. And I have nothing but the highest respect for them. We don't have those kind of resources, but we don't really need them. But once, and this is still sinking in, the situation with Merlin really clarified that for me quite a bit, with just how well people responded and how enthusiastically and how energetically, all of it. But we are not going to be worried as much about the reach. But we're gonna take the quality over quantity thing, because I think I think the Bill Whittle nows and the right angles never see less than 10,000. At least they didn't before they dialed our numbers back down. They were doing 20, 25, 30, 40,000, and then they simply changed their algorithms. They told us they were going to change the algorithms, presumably to remove spam accounts and so on. But they cut our views in either in half or by 2/3. So that's where we're going, and I think at 29 cents a day, it's certainly reasonable. And really, the thing that's beginning to dawn on me is that for 29 cents a day, it's not just my website or my membership. It's yours as well. You have a chance to say all the things that are on your mind, and your chance to reach people of similar mindset, and the content is going to be increasing, and so on and so on and so on. People are talking about things like mugs and so on. I think probably, I mean, we went through a period where we bought a bunch of mugs and bought a bunch of T-shirts and sat on the shelves back there. We had to deal with all of the fulfillment issues and all the rest of that stuff. I think the answer for mugs is for us we'll just release the art, and we'll just release what it is. And if you want to go to Cafe Press or something and make T-shirts, all yours. We can figure that out. So anyway, it's really, really exciting, and by having this thing, I don't want to commit to this because there may be aspects to it that I'm unaware of, but certainly my inclination. I'll talk to the adults about this, but my inclination is, let's just make the logos and the Stratosphere Lounge things available. This guy, the man from U.N.C.L.E. Homunculus, he's going away. We'll keep the artwork for those of you that like it. He'll stay on the Stratosphere Lounge logo, but when you shrink that guy down to the size of a bug on a video, he just disappears. So we're going to go with that new kind of cool build BW with the orbital stuff. So my inclination, barring intervention from people with better judgment than me, is to essentially just say, here's the artwork, and if you want to put out a T-shirt design and do it through Cafe Press, where they only make as many as are ordered, then sweet. We've seen so much great artwork come in from members. We've seen so much great artwork come in from members, Stratosphere Loungers. Every now and then I get some kind of either an engraving or a woodcut or something of people who've done amazing artwork based on some of these ideas. And we're getting the same thing from the space game as well. I did all the initial graphics for that, but people are running with it, and they're coming back with patches and posters. Posters especially are just astonishingly good. I was like, wow. So we may end up, again, independent of BWDC, BillWhittle.com. I like the posters enough to say, frankly, I think what we'll do is we'll just print those and we'll distribute them to people because they're damn good. So anyway, that's that. And thank you for the remembering, because that is the kind of thing that I just love. When I hear something really catchy and memorable and stuff, it's great. And Eric Blake is just wrote, art from conservatives, high quality. We can win the culture! Triple exclamation points. Eric Blake is like a Mustang. He's like a colt in a stall full of Clydesdales, and he's always just like bucking around. It's like, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's absolutely fantastic. That is terrific. So everybody cool your jets. Let's go to the Facebook page now and immerse ourselves in the wondrousness of the wonder. All right, here we go. So we're real excited, and Scott's real excited, and we're going to be going to start a GoFundMe campaign. I think we'll start it probably Monday or Tuesday. Once the site is available and open, we're going to do that. And this is the final thing I'll say about this. I know a lot of people either don't want the recurring membership, they can't afford the recurring membership, they don't want their credit card out there information. I get it. So 4 times a year, starting next week, we're going to do a just essentially a GoFundMe campaign. We're going to try and raise some amount of money. I've got a rough idea what that number is. That additional cash will allow us to do things like hire Scott Ott full time. That's the primary goal, is to get that guy out of Nebraska Furniture Mart. He's worked like a slave, and he's invested enormous amounts of time into this, and I'm very grateful. I meant to say this earlier. I can't believe I didn't. I was talking about all the things that Scott had built into the site. And one of the things he's built into the site is on the Stratosphere Lounge page on the new member site. You watch Stratosphere Lounge streaming live. You watch it on our website. And I suspect that we will be taking questions there, and we will be dealing with comments there. And if we can get this thing rolling, we can do this more than once a week. I would like to grow the membership to somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 people. And I don't want to be thinking smaller. It might be possible to do more than that, but right now we're at about a quarter of that. And given the number of people that watch the shows pretty much every day, I think we could probably get to 10,000 people. If we got to 10,000 people, we'd be in great shape. So some of the things that we'd like to do with the GoFundMe campaign are little things, but they're important things. One of them is to take, despite the fact that I thought it was a good idea and it remains a good idea, there's the Bill Whittle Now set. But with some additional funds, what we'd like to do is take that monitor down and make that a practical set where we have Bill Whittle Now kind of on the wall, maybe backlit like the rest of this stuff is, and lit significantly better so that we can increase the quality of just the shows going out. We have, strangely enough, we're very, very limited by how we can light me, because that screen, while it's great, reflects. It's a mirror, and we have to put lights up so high and so far off angle that we don't get to really light that set the way we would like to. Certainly we don't get to light it the way my wife is capable of lighting it, because of the fact that we get so many reflections off of that screen. So making that into a practical set, let me just be crystal clear about this, copying exactly what they're doing at Daily Wire. We did many years at PJTV with virtual sets, but I've been to Daily Wire office many times. It's magnificent. It's magnificent. And they've done such an amazing job. But having a practical set means that you can light it, you can move around a little more, you can have a second camera, you can do all kinds of things. And with the fundraising, we might even be able to have, who knows, maybe even have an engineer and switch cameras, all kinds of things like that. That would be pretty cool. So that's one of the things we want to do. But Stratosphere Lounge will stream directly to the website. We'll be able to take questions and comments from the website. And this is the world that we are building now. And there's a number of reasons for this. Look, we don't have the resources. And when I say resources, I mean we don't have 6 or 7 figures. We don't have $6 or $7 million necessary to do the marketing, the ad campaigns, lay out the all of the account, all this stuff. We just don't have it. And to be honest with you, I don't really think that's what I want to do. I really enjoy this environment, and what we need to do is we need to use, bring back some firewalls and use the edited versions of the existing shows that we're doing to expand the community out. And if we can get to 10,000 members, we will be golden. So for those of you out there who were members, we're going to ask you to remember, and I think we finally got something, that we can be proud of, and something that presumably is going to be worth 29 cents a day. So there we go. Alrighty. So on to Facebook, or off of Facebook, as I like to say. Here we go. Oh, this is so exciting. Oh, by the way, when I first started the stream, there was a comment there on the chat, in the live chat, that said, I wonder if he will ever get to my question, or if he will get to my question. And it sounded so plaintive and so honest, and it was from Martin Archer, so I'm going to do his question first. I'm going to find it. Oh, and one more thing. You know, we got a pretty big vault here. We've got, I don't know, 5,000 hours. We've got 300 or 400 firewalls and afterburners, at least that, I would think. And so one of the things that we could do with this additional funding is we could get an editor on this, and then we could go back and look at all of the existing firewalls, which average 7-8 minutes, and we could find the best 2 minutes on a particular subject, let's say. So here's 2 minutes from the firewalls, putting them back out there for people to see, taking, we're not restricting ourselves to what that particular firewall was about. So if there's a good 2 minutes on how capitalism works and a firewall about, the Air France flight, then we'll chop that up, we'll send it out. I'm thinking maybe we could call it the 2-minute warning, we could call it firewall, 2-minute warning. And we'd basically repackage some of the existing messages in a much more chewable form, get them out there, and reintroduce some people to some of these things that need to be out there. One of the reasons I've slowed down on the firewalls is I talked to Scott. Is like I just don't know what else to say about socialism when we just re-edit these things. But there are some things to talk about. The one I've got in mind is called. There's a famous book. I want to say it came out in the 70s about the destruction of America's educational system. This was in the 70s. There was an educational system then called Why Johnny Can't Read. And I'm thinking the next firewall is going to be called Why Johnny Can't Think. And yes, I do not own the PJTV stuff. I wish I did. The show I did with what's his name were fantastic. We're now on the third almost done. So one or two almost dones to go, and I'll be done. And I will ask the fans. I will ask the members for firewall ideas. Members. What was it? Come on, Billy. We're talking about repackaging. Something to do with PJTV. I remember. Yes, this is the last thing. Before one more thing, this son of a bitch has taken so much of my money and delivered so little that it's just. Don't anybody tell him. Don't anybody tell him anything. Okay? Don't anybody tell him anything. Anyway, flew out of my head again, as it's wont to do. We were repackaging PGD. Yes, I remember. I don't know whether it needs to be renamed or probably not. It just needs to get out there more. But I have to tell you, Scott and I shoot 3 times a week usually, and after we're done, at least half the times, maybe more often than not, I get a question that I don't know how I'm going to answer, and we got one on Amtrak, and we got one on I forget what the last one was. FBI DNA database, and I want to make sure I'm crystal clear on this. I amaze myself by the answers that come out on Bill Whittle now, especially. And it's not because of me at all. It's because this philosophy is so coherent and so powerful. When you understand it and how it works, there is essentially nothing that people can ask you about or try to stick you with where you don't have a perfectly fine solution. And we're selling common sense and decency. That's the formula. Common sense and decency. And and when I get these questions about things that I haven't thought about at all, like the DNA thing, there's talk about FBI keeping a DNA database on people. What's the answer to that? How do you deal with that? And I don't know this question's coming. I'm thinking on my feet. That's one we shot earlier this morning. So what's the answer? So using these conservative principles, I was able to say, well, let's find out. One answer, let's look at the extremes. You could either eliminate DNA testing completely, but DNA is a valuable thing to make criminals go to jail and get innocent people out of jail. That's important, nice to have. So what's the other extreme? The other extreme is where there's a DNA database of all Americans. It's been kept when you're born and they've got it and so on. And the answer that we eventually were able to walk out to, Scott and I working it back and forth, is that DNA testing ought to be done the same way that any other invasion of our privacy is done under legal means. It should be subject to Fourth Amendment scrutiny. There should be a warrant issued based on probable cause, and that when that DNA sample is taken, certainly if you're acquitted and probably if you're convicted, but once that sample is taken for that particular case, that information has to be destroyed. In other words, we're going to get this, we're going to use it to determine proof of innocence or guilt based on probable cause with the case being made to a judge. And then if that is found to be reasonable cause, then the DNA sample is taken, and certainly in the case of acquittal and likely in the case of a conviction, after that information needs to be destroyed. And what we ended up with, just so you know how these things kind of work, because you'll see it today or tomorrow, it's up tomorrow, I think. So what that discussion led to was a discussion of, okay, so what's reprehensible? I know a world without DNA testing would be a world where fewer criminals went to jail and innocent people who were in jail weren't set free. DNA is useful, but it's very powerful. And what we got down to is the idea that you have to be able to destroy information. But Scott pointed out that nothing is ever destroyed. There's a record kept of everything. And that led me to think that no, the issue really is we need legal mechanisms and third-party independent watchdog organizations that are constantly testing to make sure that information that we want destroyed is destroyed. When I log out of Facebook and I say I'm done with Facebook, I want that information destroyed. I want it erased and I want it gone. And I want it to be gone. And I think it's time for the American people to hire some insiders at Google and Facebook to test, to make sure that it's gone. Which led us to the final conclusion of that particular episode, which I guess you don't have to watch now. But the final conclusion of it was, look, if you're in favor of an FBI database of DNA in order to prevent crime, then what you really, really ultimately are dealing with all the information kept on file and all the rest of it, you really, when it's finished and said and done, what it really comes down to is the presumption of innocence. Do you live in a society, or do you want to live in a society where you are presumed to be innocent and the state has to prove you guilty? Because in a world like that, there is no FBI DNA database. You're innocent. You are an innocent person. We have no information on you. We have no surveillance on you. We don't keep any track of any of your private businesses. It's none of our business. The government should be out of that. If it turns out that you were either involved in a crime, either that you committed or you're peripherally involved with something that looked like it might have implicated you, then we have a very effective process when it works of having a judge determine whether there's probable cause to do an invasion of your privacy. At that point, then you gather that sample, and after it's done, you destroy it, because we believe in the presumption of innocence. And if we don't fight against this, then we are really in trouble, because the existence of the database is the presumption of guilt. It's the presumption of guilt. If there's an FBI database, why wait till you're an adult to be swabbed? Why not just take DNA prints of everybody at birth, put them in the giant FBI file, and then that way, when you commit a crime, which is apparently going to happen any second now, the government will be able to instantly know who you are and where you are and what you did. And they'll be able to say, well, we picked up some DNA residue of you in Starbucks at 4:20 p.m. and then at 4:26 p.m. we also detected it on a sensor we have at the gas station. And during that time, there was a murder committed in that area, so we'd like you to come in and have a little talk with us. I don't want to live in that world, and you don't either. Now, the reason I bring all this up is that these are discussions that came out in real time, live, that I didn't have time to think about, and they're procured by Scott's question and his follow-up questions because he doesn't let me off easy. He needles me with the replies, and then you have to be able to not only make the case and defend the case, you have to defend the case against the rebuttal. And this is the reason I brought it up. It's easy to do. It's easy to do, and it's only easy to do because these ideas really work. We were talking about this morning. I said, Scott, I don't know how this happens. I don't know where it comes from, but my God, I mean, this really works. And he said, that's why they call them timeless principles, brother. So, something to be said for timeless principles. I'm in favor of them. Some people are against them. As for me, I'm for them. All right, let's see what we got. I will be happy to be done with Facebook. Happy. All right, so Eric Blake has